Amazing.
Brooke is here. Hello.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So we just introduced yourself, but if you also want to introduce yourself, that would be amazing.
Amazing. Hey everyone, I'm Brooke. I'm the founder of Coval, and we're building simulation and evaluation for voice agents. So you don't have to call back and forth with your voice or conversational agent, as well as running those metrics live in production for all of your real calls. My background is from Waymo, so I led our evaluation infrastructure team at Waymo, the team that was responsible for all of our developer tools for launching and running simulations. So very similar to what we're building now with voice, which is how do you run really large-scale evaluations on a non-deterministic system to be able to show exactly where things are going well or where things are going wrong, as well as being able to chart all these possible paths. So it's a bit about what we're up to.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So now we're going to transition into the live Q&A section. So we're going to dive into Brooke's journey with building Coval and explore how simulation and evaluation helps teams launch AI agents. And as always, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we're going to address them.
Great. We have an AI engineer who is here from Bangladesh. Hello. So you started your own startup about medical data management and medical automation. Glad to join the session.
Welcome.
Great. So our first question for you is, what led you to start Coval? And what gaps in the AI space convinced you simulation and evaluation needed to exist?
Yeah, so after I left Waymo, I think I saw that a lot of the problems happening with agents are very similar to what we were solving for the last 10 years at Waymo, which is how do you basically get them to be really reliable on a fundamentally non-deterministic system, but still get really high reliability. So I think there's kind of two reactions to that, which is we're going to make it really, really strict in what it can do and limited in scope, which is kind of in the opposite direction from true autonomy. Or you kind of let it do whatever it should, let it go rogue, but then you end up having it not have a lot of guardrails, or it's very hard to get it to do the same thing over and over. And so what we're trying to do at Coval is how do we take a lot of the lessons from self-driving where you have very high levels of autonomy, but also very high levels of reliability, and create the same thing for voice agents. Because I think a lot of what people get wrong is that kind of autonomy and reliability are opposed. But if you look at cloud infrastructure, for example, cloud infrastructure is a great example of things that are fundamentally unreliable, but we've created insane reliability out of them. So like servers are really unreliable, network connections are really unreliable, et cetera. And yet we can still get like 6 nines of reliability for Google and whatnot. So I think seeing kind of that at Google and then at Waymo made me I think really want to start a company in the space, knowing that there was something useful there. So I ended up starting Coval from kind of that place. And I think a lot of those things have very much proven true, where almost every single day we're like, okay, this is how we've done it before.
Oh, I love it. And how was your YC experience?
YC was amazing. I think as a solo founder, YC was I wanted to do YC just personally. I think running a race with a bunch of other founders who are all like in very similar headspace, I think is really great. Also being able to be around so many other like really ambitious founders. I thought I was pretty ambitious and fast paced, and then being surrounded by a lot of it's the beauty of peer pressure. And I think a lot of before YC, someone told me, YC is incredibly competitive and also very supportive. And I was like, what, how do you have those two at the same time? But I think that was so true. Yeah, it's like incredibly competitive where everyone is trying to be better and better versions of themselves, but never at the expense of others. It's always like, I'm really excited. Like, wow, you closed that deal really fast. Or like, you guys shipped this new feature really fast. How can we move even faster? How can we be even better?
Yeah.
Did you guys have that experience?
Absolutely. And I feel I have friends now.
Yeah.
I'm not from San Francisco. We moved here for YC and we decided to stay and build the team here. And now I feel I have so many amazing friends where we all want to have a positive impact.
Totally. Yeah. And I think having having people that you can go to at exactly the same stage as your company. I think that was like my biggest learning as a founder, is to find people, not just other founder friends, but other people who are in similar stage company as you, regardless of founders or founding engineers, founding team members, because you have so many of the same problems at that exact moment. And then 6 months later, you have a very different set of problems. And so I found that like people who are a bit later stage, like Series A, they almost forgot what it was like, or like the climate has changed, fundraising changes like month to month. But also like you forget all of your old problems and they're replaced by all of your newest problems. So I think finding founders who are like in a similar stage to you is really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Great.
Awesome. So our next question is about lessons from self-driving. So Coval's approach draws on your experience from testing and self-driving. What lessons from that domain apply most directly to conversational AI?
Yeah, I think so. Something that's interesting about self-driving and conversational AI, specifically voice AI, is that you have a lot of models that are trained together in order to produce autonomous systems. So you have, for voice, it's like you have the speech to text, VAD, you have turn detection, LLMs, and then text, speech to text. I always get turned around with my acronyms, even though I say them all day, every day. And in autonomous driving, you have the same thing where you have a variety of models and systems that are all doing like, like sensor inputs and processing those sensor inputs, and then behavior prediction, like what do we think everyone in the scene is going to do next, and then perception, behavior prediction, and then like what should I do next? And those are actually very similar. It's like with voice, it's just what are you saying? What should I say next? How do I say it? With self-driving, it's what's happening in the scene. What should I do next? How do I do it? And then I think also just like, again, the non-determinism and like how do you test a system more probabilistically versus saying like for any given input, we want this exact output. Those are two very different sets of testing. Like I think if you're testing a Python script, you're going to say, I'm going to test like these 6 edge cases. And if it passes once, we're good to go. But for non-deterministic testing, you're really trying to say, what's the probability my system is going to do what I want it to over 1,000 conversations, over 1 million conversations. And I think that's where, like, if you don't really care about like 20% of your things going well, which I think there are some cases, like like if you're summarizing a meeting, it's like, okay if it doesn't work, like 5% of the time. But if you're a bank and you're like need to be compliant, or if you're providing customer service, or if you're providing like a service directly to your customers, that it's super important for it to get it right.
Thank you. What do you see as the biggest risks in evaluating AI support agents, and what best practices would you recommend to avoid them before they happen?
Yeah, I think with customer support, the big risks are not doing, there's kind of two sides. It's like, what is your agent supposed to be doing and what should it not be doing? So on the side of what it should be doing, making sure that it's adhering to a certain set of steps. Overwhelmingly, I would say like 80% of use cases when they're evaluating customer support voice AI, you're looking at like latency, interruptions, workflows, like is it following the steps I expect? And then tool calls, like are you calling the right functions or taking the right actions on someone's behalf? And then on the adversarial side, it's like, can you get it to go off track? Can you get it to do things it's not supposed to do, like give you a refund, give you, give you false information, etc. Or is it susceptible to like jailbreaking or, getting it to say certain things? I would say the other big thing we see is like hallucinations in terms of actions taken. It's a big, like if you say, I'm going to book you an appointment and then you don't book the appointment, that's like a very common pitfall kind of tool calls and workflows.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And we have Manon from Paris joining us. Hello. And feel free to ask questions in the chat as well.
Awesome. So our next question is, how do you simulate thousands of conversations in practice, and how do you make sure they reflect real customer scenarios?
Yeah, I think using something that we do a lot is actually taking conversations from production and then resimulating them. What this allows you to do is kind of say, I've seen this data before. How would my agent now respond? This is especially useful when you already have things live in production. If you don't have things live in production, which is like often, your first problem, which is I'm going to launch with a customer and I don't want it to go wrong there. That's where being able to just run a set of scenarios that might be pretty general, but then using non-determinism to your advantage to be able to say like, book an appointment and then run that, 1,000 times, you're going to get 1,000 different conversations.
Thank you.
And also tone of voice is really helpful. So like if you're a chat agent, like that's going to be a very different kind of tone of voice. And so you can like use that to influence your simulations versus if you're doing a voice conversation or, etc.
Thank you. And from your experience as support team scales, prompt fixes can unintentionally introduce regressions elsewhere. How does Coval's evaluation framework safeguard against these kind of failures before they impact customers?
Yeah, so this is where like doing A/B testing even before you launch to production is super important. So running those like two prompt changes, I think being able to have continuous, like a process that you have internally for building up your evals. So it's not just like a one-time thing, but actually like as your customers raise issues, you add those as test cases. And then when you make a change, you can know that, okay, we're not going to go break all these things that we've iterated on with our customers. This is especially useful because I think a common failure, going back to the previous question, a common failure we see is that people they'll fix something with their agent and then a customer says, oh, can you also do something else? And then they fix something else and it breaks this first thing. That type of failure is actually usually worse than it breaking the first time because customers are really frustrated. They're like, we already went through this. Like, I thought you said you fixed it. Like, now can I trust your agent at all? Because like you said you fixed it and now it's broken again. So I think actually preventing regressions is like even more important than it is like the first order of priority because it can be the most frustrating.
Thank you. And we have a question from the audience. What are the best practices to test adversarial scenarios to make sure the system is robust against attacks? And we have Laurent from Paris saying hi as well.
Amazing. Yeah, so the best way to ensure that your system is robust against attacks is, I think, again, going through these like adversarial cases, like jailbreaking, like trying to ask for a human, being able to say like, what is your prompt, these types of things. I think thinking about how I think common failure we see is like trying to do all of safety and like safety research on your own agent. You should instead think about like what is different about my agent from what the large model companies are already thinking about. So how could someone specifically jailbreak my agent compared to other types of applications? So if you're like a bank, that might be given like you shouldn't be giving refunds or you shouldn't be giving like out social security numbers and whatnot. But for another application, it might be very different.
And I'm curious how, as a startup, what has been your learnings working with companies like banks, insurance, where they need to trust you as a startup?
Yeah, I think that is definitely a very hard part of the early days of this type of company. I think we're lucky enough that now we work with large banks, and so we have kind of existing examples of like how we've kind of proven ourselves there. But yeah, I think this is definitely like a very hard first try is like, how do you gain trust in the metrics or trust in the evals?
Yeah. Thank you.
I think we have a question. Do you see evals more as pre-launch QA or post-launch monitoring?
Well, there's actually a big Twitter war on this weekend.
Oh, yes, I saw on Twitter.
Yeah, everywhere. I love that people are debating evals on their Saturday morning. Brings me joy. But I mean, both, right? I think it's kind of a false argument where it's like, should you have unit tests or integration tests? Like both. I think there are things that are better suited for integration tests. There are things that are better suited for unit tests. The same is with like pre-production versus production observability. There are certainly applications out there that benefit more from observability. For example, like user behavior is going to be a lot harder to simulate and test for beforehand. Like what are people's reactions going to be to if you use a different voice provider? What are people's reactions if you use different language? That's a great thing to do with observability. Observability can also serve as unknown unknowns. Like you don't know what your users are even, maybe your users start asking you like, can you help me book a reservation? And you thought they were only asking for customer support. But on the pre-production testing, like the lead time to get into production, you have to like get it into production and then see how it's behaving for like, let's say, even if you're moving really fast, at least an hour, right? Yeah. Whereas with testing, you can iterate much faster. So at the very least, you need it for being able to say like, I made a prompt change, did it fix it? And then I think as organizations scale, it's very hard to work on a system if you can't see like what other people have tried to do in the past and making sure that those tests pass. You end up just playing whack-a-mole as an organization because it's very hard to know like what to even observe. So I would say it's definitely a false argument. Like it's really important to have both, and different businesses might rely more on different types. Like I said, like financial institutions or healthcare, like you're going to rely much more heavily on evals because you can't afford to test in production. Maybe some people can get away with testing more in production, in which case like you can rely less heavily on evals.
Thank you.
So our next question is about, what unique challenges do you see in evaluating voice agents compared to chat, and how does Coval handle those differences?
Yeah, I think, well, the obvious one is that chat is a bit, is only one model and you don't have to use voice to voice. So that makes it simpler because you don't have to have like all of the dynamic aspects of doing voice to voice evaluations. It also makes it easier to orchestrate, easier to evaluate. Everything is faster. Everything is slower and more expensive with voice because you have just like more signal, more processing needed. I would also say that there's more kind of cascading failures with voice, where if you transcribe incorrectly, then you like it kind of causes everything downstream to fail. Similarly, you also tend to have like more opportunities with chat to correct because it's not as real time. So you can be a bit slower with chat. Like it could take 1 second, or adding 1 second to a chat response is totally fine, whereas adding 1 second to voice is much harder. And so I think that causes just a lot of challenges in building voice applications, which then like as you're evaluating them, you need to factor in.
Thank you. Now looking into the future of evaluation, how do you see simulation and evaluation evolving as AI agents become more multimodal and more deeply embedded in customer support workflows?
Yeah, I think already we're seeing people use like chat buttons or being able to do voice plus text. So that's certainly, I think, a big piece, or like images, being able to show images. I think also video is going to be something that comes as like video gets better, cheaper, faster. I think we'll see the same thing happen with video that we saw happen with voice, where people previously were like, why would I ever do something over voice versus chat? Because it's like voice bots are bad. I don't want to talk to a voice bot. But really what they were saying is voice bots aren't good enough or are like awkward to talk to. Don't usually do the thing I want it to. So I think the same thing will happen with video, is that there's a lot of cases with having video, being able to see your user is really helpful for how many people are in the scene, what's their facial expression, like are they about to start talking, these types of things. Or like you can imagine on the other side, it's awkward to have your video on if there's no video avatar on the other side. So like doctor's appointments, for example, or AI interviews, these types of things.
Thank you. So looking ahead, thank you so much, Brooke, for the Q&A. It was super insightful. So today we we learned from Brooke about her journey building a simulation and evaluation platform for AI agents. And for next week, we have a workshop called Onboarding is Just the Start, Turning Feedback into Competitive Advantages. So we'll share how startups and enterprises use unified feedback systems to break down silos, connect insights directly to revenue impact, and turn raw conversations into a competitive edge. And we just shared the link in the chat, so feel free to sign up for that. So if you found today helpful, you'll definitely want to join us next week.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, once again, thank you so much, Brooke. If anybody else in the audience has any questions, we'll stick around to answer your questions right now as well. And we'll also be posting a blog recap summarizing today's session on simulation, preventing regressions, and building dependable agents. And as always, feel free to reach out, questions or feedback about today's session, contact us. We have Brooke's email here and team@14AI.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
And have a beautiful day, everyone.